You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better. Put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the first part of What If Deku and Hero Academia Joins Power Rangers. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of CT 7567 rules on fanfiction.net. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Aldera Junior High School. Mustafa, Japan. 1:30 p.m. Long ago, before the existence of Quirks, evil threatened the planet Earth. They came in many forms, from the space which Rita Repulsa and her husband Lord Zed, the machine empire led by Kind Mondo, the pirate Divatox, to the ancient force known as Daishur, MSTR Xandrid's Nylok forces, the Warstar Empire and even forces from the future. They had one goal in mind, the complete conquest of Earth, and it seemed that they would complete their conquest unopposed. The students listened as their foreign exchange student presented his personal project. The student was a 14-year-old American, with jet black hair, blue eyes and light tan skin stood in front of the blackboard, wearing the uniform of their school. One student in particular, the dark green-haired, green-eyed and freckled, Izukumidoriya listened with interest as the student continued. But they were wrong. When Rita Repulsa was released, a team of heroes came together to fight such evil, with new teams emerging as newer and deadlier threats emerged. With advanced weapons, power vehicles known as zords and incredible powers, these heroes became known as Power Rangers. Who cares about those losers? They're just stories told to kids who were born as quirkless rejects, like yourself loser. Came the crude and arrogant voice of Katsuki Bakugou, a young man with average height, slim muscular build, short, spiky, sandy brown hair, and red eyes, who sat at his desk with his back laid against the chair and his feet on the desk. The Power Rangers didn't exist, and everyone knows it, so give us all a break and end this stupid kid report. Everyone laughed at Bakugou's comments, but the boy ignored them. No matter how strong the opponent, no matter what challenge was thrown their way, the Power Rangers always stood ready to fight for what's right, much like the pro-hero All-Might today. In fact, it is said that many pro-heroes were inspired to become the heroes they are today because of the Power Rangers, even saying that they would be honored to fight alongside them, even if it was only once. Though the Power Rangers have faded into history with the emergence of Quirks, and many have considered them to be children's stories, the Power Rangers have affected hero society, and continue to do so to this day. Their weapons and equipment have been used as the basis for many support items used by heroes over the years. The Silver Guardians have been around since the days of the Time Force Rangers, now work alongside our heroes in their fights against villains and those who have been born without quirks, like firemen, police officers and even scientists have been inspired to become heroes in their own way. In conclusion, the Power Rangers continue to influence hero society and will continue to do so until the end of time. The student finished. The students remained silent, some of them laughing silently under their breaths before some of them started to applaud the report presented to them, some of which laughed at him. Thank you for that report, Mr. Grayson. Please, take your seat and we can continue with the rest of the reports. The teacher instructed. The boy nodded and walked back towards his desk, situated right beside Izuku's desk, who gave him a smile as they listened to the other reports by the rest of the class. When the day ended, Izuku closed his locker and put on his sneakers. You did a great job on your report, Connor. I only wish my report was as good as yours. Izuku said meekly. Connor Grayson, the exchange student chuckled. Izuku, you really shouldn't be putting yourself down so much. Your project the other day was amazing, certainly better than Katsuki's project about how badass his quirk is and how he'd become the next #1 hero. Personally speaking, that kid has a lot of issues and I think he's let all that praise he got as a kid go to his head. Seriously, your mom told me, he's had a superiority complex ever since his quirk emerged and he's been a bully to you for who knows how many years. A guy like him, going to UA High. That's going to be a blemish on that school if there ever was one. Seriously, why haven't you reported his bullying to the teachers? Connor asked. Even if he is a JRK, I still consider Kaken a friend, and his quirk is just so amazing. I don't want to ruin his chances of being a hero, even if I know I should do something about his bullying. Izuku admitted as he and Connor walked from the school to the station. I get it. I've been bullied myself back in the States for not having a quirk and many teachers turned a blind eye to these actions, especially if those students have promising quirks and they believe they'll make great heroes. I can't tell you how many times I've seen an undeserving student get accepted into a school for heroes. Connor said, understanding the situation completely. Still, you should at the very least let someone know about this, you can't keep living your life with someone putting you down. Then again, I've noticed something different about you. Different? Izuku stammered. Ever since that sludge villain attacked Bakugou, you've changed a lot. Your muscles are building up and you look stronger than you did before. I don't know what or who it was that inspired this change in you, but I know one thing, you're the kind of person who'd make a great hero, quirk, or no quirk. He finished. Izuku smiled, even since Connor came to stay with him and his mom as part of this exchange program, he felt like he finally had a friend so many years of being considered an outcast because he didn't have a quirk. He even thought that Connor had an amazing quirk but was completely surprised to learn that he was born without a quirk, like himself, and that made him feel connected as with his American friend. Thanks, Connor. That means a lot. Connor smiled as the two of them continued towards Izuku's home, where izukumidoriya was waiting for them, with Connor bags all packed and loaded into the taxi that was to take them to the airport where Connor would catch his flight back to Island, his home. Hey, Izuku. It's possible that our paths may not cross again, and while I did give you my phone number, I've got a piece of advice for you. When you look to the stars, think of one of them as my soul and know that I'll always be your friend. Connor said to Izuku, who smiled brightly while trying to hold back the tears from his eyes. Mrs. Midoriya, thanks again for allowing me to stay with you and your son. Take care of yourself and give my regards to your husband. Inko was quick to grab Connor and pulled him into a tight hug, crying comically. Oh. I'm going to miss you so much. I wish you could stay. Inko cried. Why yeah, I know. You told me that before. Connor gasped, before Inko finally let go of him and he climbed into the taxi. Take care you too, I'll see you both again one day, I promise, he shouted as the taxi drove from the apartment and towards the airport. Hours passed and by 6 o'clock, Connor's plane had taken to the sky, and he was on his way back home to America. Izuku, one day you will be a great hero, and when that happens, I'll be there supporting you no matter what. He said to himself and leaned back into his seat, closing his eyes as Japan faded into the distance. He was unaware of what was to come. British Museum, London. England. 10 p.m. 2 bound and gagged guards, 1 male and 1 female, were tossed into a supply closet. Their muffled screams silenced the moment the door was closed as multiple masked men locked closet before they made a mad dash towards the exhibit they had scoped out for days, the treasures and relics of a long-lost civilization, excavated in the deserts of the Middle East. Rubies, sapphires, emeralds, alexandrites, diamonds, beryls, and much more were placed on display for the people to see and wonder what type of civilization such treasures came from. But what mattered to the masked men was the amount of money they would get when they sold these gems on the black market. They planned their heist carefully, scooping out all possible avenues of approach from multiple days of scouting, gathered the supplies they needed and were able to get the guard rooster from a museum employee who they promised a cut of the profits if they helped him. Crowbar in hand, one of the masked men raised it high and smashed the glass case surrounding many emeralds and began loading them into their duffel bag. The alarms had been disabled, thanks to a computer virus inserted into the museum security systems, ensuring that the police and local heroes wouldn't be made aware of the ongoing heist. This here's gonna fetch me a pretty coin when we see sell M on the black market. One of the masked men said. Aye, just so long as the Coopers don't catch wind of our little plan. No sense in leaving these beauties locked away for people to gawk at them. Another said, looting a chalice into his bag, as did the rest of the masked men, save for one whose eyes were fixed on an unusual-looking tomb. Oi, what are you looking at? The masked man knelt down and looked at the tomb, with an inscription written on it. Be warned, those who disturb the one who sleeps in this, their true resting place shall bring a great evil upon this earth. The man read, then grinned. Heh, a warning like that means that whoever's buried in here must be quite a fellow, bet he's got a few nice-looking treasures that will fetch a hefty price. He then raised his left arm, which transformed into a blade and cut through the tomb's lid, which fell to the ground with a thud. Careful, will you? You might as well have tripped an alarm that we didn't know about, another man shouted. Relax, will you, the alarms are all taken care of, I knew what I was. They began before emerging from the tomb was a spirit that hovered over the robber before it took form. Appearing before the robbers was a creature similar to a drake dragon with red skin, gold armor on the chest, legs and arms, a sword in their hand and menacing red eyes with a pair of wings on its back. This creature was none other than the prince of all demons, Olympus, the son of Queen Ben-Shira. Whoa! Are you the ones who released me? Olympus questioned. Before the robbers could answer, Olympus raised his sword and swung it at the robber. Allow me to reward you all with your destruction. Olympus said, charging towards the robbers and proceeded to cut them down before they could even fight back, save for one who was smirking with delight. Their bodies fell to the ground, but their energy was then absorbed into Olympus's body, restoring his strength. Finally, after 200 years of being locked away in the shadow world after death, I have returned. Oh, you certainly have, my prince. The last robber said, waving a hand in front of him to reveal the form of Jinxer, monster maker and the most loyal servant of Olympus. Oh, my prince. It has been so long since I've been able to gaze at your mighty form. I am pleased to finally see you once more. Jinxer. I was wondering why I hadn't seen you in the shadow world. I thought you were destroyed when the Rangers destroyed the Omega Megazord. How are you still alive? Olympus said, curiously. I was able to eject from the Megazord before those rotten Rangers destroyed it, but when they stopped the ceremony, I was left behind. You can't imagine the unspeakable things I had to do just to survive. I had to live like I was a human, but I waited until these treasures from our civilization were uncovered and easily tricked those humans into breaking in, so I could free you. Now, you're back and we can finally have our revenge, although much has changed while you were away. Jinxer explained. Tell me later, now we must leave before the humans discover us. Let us return to the Skull Cavern at once. Olympus told his faithful follower, both of them vanishing in a form of spectral energy just as the two bound guards finally managed to break out of the supply closet. Mariner Bay Harbor. Mariner Bay, California, United States. Island. 8 p.m. Checking his watch as he stood in his lab, David Shields, the former sidekick of Allmight, scientist and loving father, looked at a photograph he kept on his desk. Said photo was of him, his daughter Melissa and his adoptive son, Connor Grayson, who he took in after his parents were killed when he was 4 years old. A villain attack on a local bank caused the untimely death of Connor's parents, who were skilled scientists and were trying to make a withdrawal when the villain tried to rob the bank but was forced to take hostages when the police surrounded the bank, along with a pro-hero. Sadly, the police's attempts to negotiate with the villain failed and the hero acted without thinking, using his quirk to take down the villain, but by then they had already killed Connor's parents before they forced their way into the bank. Having known his parents well, David adopted Connor as his son and raised him alongside Melissa, but he had begun to develop a hatred of heroes for not being able to save his parents, cursing all of them, even All Might, until that fateful day when he made a decision that changed his life. It's been almost 7 years since that accident, and he's come a long way since then. If only his parents could see him now, but still. David thought before he noticed his computer screen glowed bright, indicating he had a video message. Toshi, he said to himself as he opened the email. No, my friend, it isn't Toshi. Came the reply of Dr. Mondo Tetsumi, a fellow scientist and creator of hero support items in Japan as he appeared on his screen. Already 60 years old, his white hair and beard showed he was much older than his fellow scientist. David, it's been some time since we last spoke to each other. The last time was about 4 years ago, at an expo in Tokyo. Yes, it's been a long time, Mondo, but I don't think you called me to catch up on old times, did you? David asked. My friend, what we have feared has come to pass. I detected demonic energy emanating from England, more specifically, the British Museum. Energy similar to what was detected at the beginning of the 21st century. Mondo said gravely. You don't mean, they've returned? David speculated. I'm afraid so. It appears that the demons have returned and the heroes won't be able to stop them, not alone. It's time for them to return. Mondo told David, before the message came to an end. I had hoped this day would never come. David said to himself, grabbing a briefcase from underneath his desk. But it's come and it's time for them to return. He opened it and took out 5 files, each of them labeled with the logo of certain ranger teams, more specifically the Zeo, Space, Lightspeed and Wild Force. The world needs the Power Rangers once more. Island. Residential distract. 4 p.m. I really hate being jet-lagged. Sis told me that I had to be at the lab by 3 and I didn't get up until 3:30. I am so late, Dad is going to kill me. Connor said as he ran through the streets of Island. His flight had been rerouted towards Seattle, which landed at 5 in the morning, forcing him to board a train that would take him home, which arrived at 7 in the morning, promptly falling asleep when he returned home. His adoptive father, David Shields, had requested his presence at his lab to discuss something important with him, his sister and 3 others who. What the matter was, he had no clue, but with summer vacation starting in the US, he had to take several shortcuts through various alleyways in order to make up for lost time. Running through one of the last alleyways towards the lab, Connor was only a block away from the lab when all of a sudden, an explosion erupted from nearby, knocking him flat on his butt. What the hell was that? He said aloud before he noticed the smoke ahead of him. Running through the alley, he spotted that an apartment complex had suddenly caught fire. Holy! He uttered before he pulled out his cell phone and called for help. Fire trucks soon arrived at the scene with a few pro-heroes who specialized in rescue work. Firemen were already spraying water on the flames while the heroes focused on rescuing the people trapped inside. Well, they got things under control, I better. Please. My baby's trapped inside on the 4th floor. Someone please, help her, one of the bystanders shouted from behind, policemen blocking her from running into the building, but the fire was keeping the heroes and firemen from entering the building. Connor clenched his fists, before he did the unthinkable and ran inside the building. Hey! Kid! Stop! It's too dangerous. It's not safe in there. Come back. You're going to get yourself killed. Connor ignored the pleas of the firemen and heroes as he climbed the stairs to the 4th floor. Hello? Can anyone hear me? He shouted through the fire, keeping his hand over his mouth to avoid inhaling the smoke. He then heard the barking of a dog coming from the door near him, and on instinct kicked the door open where he found a small yellow lab puppy standing by a 4-year-old girl. Good work, pup. I've got you both. Come on, let's go. The girl was still weak from the smoke she inhaled, so while she held on to her puppy, he held on to her and carried her to the exit, but it was then he saw something in the flames. He couldn't make it out, but he heard the laughter from the figure before a jet of flames shot towards him, the girl, and the dog. Hold on tight, he shouted to the girl as he sprinted towards the window and jumped through it. Glass shattered and flames shot out of the window as Connor, the girl and dog fell from the window, only to be caught by one of the heroes, who carried them safely to the ground where the girl and her dog were reunited with her mother, before being loaded into an ambulance and taken to a hospital. "That was brave of you, boy," the hero told Connor. "But you should know never to run into a burning building. You could have been killed." They then scolded. "Yeah, I know," Connor muttered, looking back at the burning building as the firemen and heroes quickly brought the fire under control. Just what was that thing? It wasn't like any villain any hero fought. It was something from the gates of hell or from those Doom games, but it spoke. He thought to himself. "There you are. I was wondering where you were," came the voice of his sister. Attractive pale skin, with a height of 5'6.5" wavy blonde hair which reached halfway down her neck, 2 shorter pieces over her shoulders, side-swept bangs that framed her face and aqua-blue eyes, Melissa Shield, the 16-year-old daughter of Dr. David Shield, stood behind one of the fire trucks. Her white short-sleeved dress shirt and plaid cuffs, with a large bow of the same design at her neck, dark raspberry pink waistcoat, pale gray capri pants, plaid pink socks and brown heels, wristwatch and pink, oval-framed glasses gave her away. "Papa was worried when you didn't pick up your phone, and when he saw the news, he was concerned that you were caught up in it. But if I had to guess, you were more than just caught up in the fire," she scolded. Connor sighed, having noticed his forest camo shirt and cargo shorts, plus his socks and sneakers were already smelling like smoke. "I can't exactly help it, sis. My body moved before I could even think straight the moment I heard that mother scream about her daughter. I couldn't just stand back and do nothing," Connor said in defense of his actions. Melissa just laughed at her adoptive brother's defense, before the two of them headed towards David's lab, but not before mentioning that Connor would need a shower and change of clothes. At the same time, in another dimension, the once proud and strong Skull Cavern was slowly being rebuilt by the Batlings, the foot soldiers of Olympus and his mother, who moved rocks and rubble out of the way as Olympus sat on a recently constructed throne. So, 200 years have passed, and the Power Rangers no longer exist. "That is what you are telling me, Jinxer?" Olympus questioned. "That is correct, my prince. With the emergence of Quirks, the Power Rangers have been regarded as nothing more than legends and stories told to children. Roughly 80% of the population has these quirks, and a new profession ours with the appearance of these meta-abilities," Jinxer explained. "They are called heroes, those who fight for justice and defend the weak. It's a disgusting sight to behold, my prince. They fight these villains, who use their own quirks to commit crimes, and the appearance of these heroes has given way to a new profession," Jinxer added with disgust. "Even if the Power Rangers aren't around, these heroes could present a problem," Olympus noted, standing from his throne. "We underestimated the Rangers and paid for it dearly. These heroes aren't to be underestimated as well. We need more information, both on these heroes, their quirks, and the other Ranger teams." The Demon Prince then turned to Jinxer. "I have a task for you, Jinxer. I want you to gather all the information on the heroes that will present the most difficulty for us to defeat and on the monsters that other Ranger teams faced in the past. Go to where they were destroyed and gather whatever residual energy might remain. We can revive them," Olympus ordered. "Right away, my prince. I shall go to the far reaches of the universe and gather their energies, but what makes you so sure they will work with us?" Jinxer asked. "Because we all share a common enemy, the Power Rangers," Olympus answered. With that, Jinxer left the Skull Cavern on his mission, leaving Olympus alone, but not for long. "Gulligan, show yourself at once," he shouted, his voice echoing around the Skull Cavern. Appearing in flaming energy and bearing a striking resemblance to the true form of one of the more challenging opponents ever faced by a team of Rangers, was the monster known as Gulligan. "I am here, as you requested, my prince," the monster responded. "I have a task for you. Take some Batlings and attack the city called Island. Even though I sent Jinxer on his mission to gather data and new allies, I believe a show of force is in order. Retreat if the battle is unwinnable." Olympus ordered. As you command, my prince. Gulligan replied and vanished from the sight of the prince. Back on Island, Connor had finished showering and changing into clothing that didn't smell like smoke and cinders, clothing that consisted of a shirt with the number 1 hero, All Might on it, gym shorts, new shoes, and socks. I hope the others weren't waiting too long for me, he said to himself before he walked into the lab. Waiting for them were 3 other teenagers the same age as Melissa. One of them was a bald African-American boy with shaved black hair and brown eyes, wearing a navy blue shirt and black pants. Another was a Korean-American boy wearing green pants and a denim jacket that covered his white t-shirt, and finally, the last one was an American girl with silver hair and silver eyes, wearing a yellow vest, brown cargo pants and sneakers. Okay, am I looking at some robots? 'Cause if this is an attempt to recreate the actual Rangers for a museum, then I don't see the point in being here. Connor asked. We've heard that a lot, being told that we look like our great-grandparents. The African boy answered with a smile. I'm Thomas Johnson, but you can call me TJ. I'm Anthony Park. The Korean boy answered. I'm Lena Earhart. The girl answered. And the only way I'd look like my great-grandmother Taylor would be if I dyed my hair blonde and wore green contacts. Sorry I kept you guys waiting, but something came up and I kind of overslept. Connor admitted sheepishly. So, what's going on? Why are we all here? Now that you're here, I can finally explain the reason. David said as he walked into the lab with a briefcase in his hand and several files which he placed on the table and slid over to the 5 teens. I'm sorry this was all sudden, but given the situation, it was a rush job. Thankfully, all of you are taking classes at the schools here on the island. Now, how many of you know about the Power Rangers? What everyone else knows about them? They were heroes who had extraordinary powers and incredible weapons and machines who protected the Earth from threats like orgs, evil space ninjas, criminals, and other threats. They were the greatest heroes of all time before Quirks emerged and were then considered legends. Anthony answered. And you are all aware that 4 of you are the descendants of some of the greatest Rangers in history. From the Space and Turbo Rangers to the Wild Force, Zeo and Lightspeed Rangers. Your families were some of the greatest heroes the world has ever seen before Quirks, that is. David replied. Which is why I've called you all here. What's all this about, Papa? Melissa asked. David took a deep breath, removed his glasses, and pinched the brim of his nose. Before I was an inventor and All Might's sidekick, I worked closely with Mondo Tetsumi in studying Ranger technology in hopes we could use that technology to create new support items for heroes. But, during our research, we discovered something that no one, not even Lightspeed, knew about. He began. Mondo and I were working on translating some ancient texts recovered from the demon's tomb, and we discovered that they were not destroyed as we thought. In fact, the tomb that was sealed was only one possible way for all the dead monsters to return from the shadow world. Whoa, hold on there, back up. Are you saying that those monsters are alive? Thomas asked in surprise. In a manner of speaking, yes. Another tomb was discovered and the texts we translated confirmed our worst fears. The demons have another means of returning to this world, a means created by an ancient cult that worshipped Queen Banshira with powerful magic. This cult, as far as we know, was defeated by an unknown group that fought the demons before they were sealed away and left a warning for all those who dared to enter the tomb, stating that if the second tomb was unsealed, the demons would return, and in greater numbers on the day of a planetary alignment. David continued. I thought that was just a rumor. Lena said. That's what we both thought, but we triple-checked the translations and we confirmed it was true. We presented our findings to the scientific community, but our claims were rejected and both of us were mocked for our crackpot theories. There were those who did believe us, but we were still missing crucial information that would prove our case. Until now. David went on, tossing a newspaper onto the table. Yesterday, Mondo detected demonic energy which emanated from the British Museum. That exhibit of those treasures from a lost civilization, they were from the demon's civilization, and as expected, there were criminals who had taken interest in these treasures. A group of criminals attempted to rob the museum, only to mysteriously vanish, leaving the treasures behind, according to the statement of the guards that were able to escape from the closet they were locked in. Let me guess, the tomb that was opened at the exhibit was the second gateway, right? Connor guessed. Yes, and we confirmed the energy source as that of Olympus and Jinxer. David answered. Even after we were ridiculed, we still continued to work on restoring Ranger technology to operational status, for the safety of the world. All 5 of you are destined to become heroes. To become the new Lightspeed Power Rangers. Lena, Connor, Thomas, Anthony, and Melissa looked at each other confused. I don't buy it for a second. Us? Becoming Power Rangers? We got heroes who can handle monsters like what you're describing, Doctor. Lena scoffed, getting up from her seat, and was about to walk away when Melissa spoke up. Wait. I know what my papa said sounds crazy, but he's never once lied about anything. He's telling the truth, I know. Melissa said in defense of her father. That explains it. Connor muttered. Explains what? Thomas asked. The fire. The one that happened before. When I was saving that girl and her dog. I saw something in the fire, he answered, remembering the silhouette he saw. It was one of them, one of the demons. What? Are you sure? David asked. Positive. And it wasn't one of those demons you'd see in video games. Connor confirmed. They're already making their move. David muttered to himself just as his partner, Samuel Abraham, rushed in. Professor, you need to turn on the news right now. The city is being attacked by monsters. Sam exclaimed. Startled by this, David turned on the TV and saw that Sam was right. All across Island and Mariner Bay, smoke billowed into the air as helicopters flew overhead, filming the battles between Mariner Bay's local Silver Guardian garrison and the attacking battlings, while the heroes based in the city engaged in rescue work and assisted the Silver Guardians. It's worse than I thought. They're already going on the offensive. David gasped, then turned back to the 5 teenagers. The world needs the Power Rangers once more. I know that pro heroes can handle themselves, but they can only do so much. What is your choice going to be? Connor was the first to stand up. I'm in. So am I. Thomas stated. Don't leave me out of this. Anthony added. Don't think for a second I'm letting you boys have all the fun. Lena joked. David smiled, then turned to his daughter. Melissa, I once told you that despite not being a hero, I still save people in other ways, such as the support items I've created, and you can become a hero in your own way. I am pleased that you decided to follow in my footsteps, but now this is your chance to become a hero. He told his daughter. Melissa smiled at the words her father just told her. When she was younger, she was always saddened that she didn't have a quirk, but now she had a chance to become a hero, without a quirk. I'm not letting my brother do all the work, so I'm in. After all, I think it's time to put those self-defense lessons to good use, she said with a smile. Then you'll need these. David said with a smile, placing the briefcase on the table and opened it, revealing the morphers. Dr. Tatsumi and I restored these morphers a few years ago. They're worn on your wrist, and they'll allow you to become the Power Rangers. He explained as each of the teens grabbed one of the morphers and placed them on their wrists. Alright, Rangers. It's time to go to work. All 5 Rangers soon exited the lab and made their way towards the garage where the fully restored rescue rover was waiting for them, along with their jackets that featured their emblems. Lena's emblem was an irregular rectangle, as was Thomas's, with the only difference being folds on the ends of the top and bottom, while Thomas's had the top corners being wedged inward and the top half being wider. The same applied to the emblems of Melissa and Anthony, their emblems triangular shaped with Anthony's having the top folded inward. Finally, Connor's emblem was a shield. Each of them in their respective colors. Let's roll out. Thomas said, jumping into the driver's seat of the rover while the others jumped in the back, buckled up and waited for the garage door to open before driving the vehicle out into the city. Rangers, the highest concentration of enemy forces, is focused on downtown Mariner Bay. Local authorities and the pro-heroes are being overwhelmed. David said through the Morpher's communicator as the 5 Rangers sped down the street with the rover's sirens roaring around as they drove past surprised citizens. In Marina Bay, the Silver Guardians fired their blasters at the Batlings while the pro-heroes such as Elecplant attacked the Batlings going after the civilians. Despite their powers, the Batlings threw bat-like grenades and fired their rocket launchers at the heroes and Silver Guardians while Gulligan watched from a distance. Ha! If this is the best that these so-called heroes can do, this will be too easy. I'll just sit back and let the Batlings do all the work, then I'll get all the credit. He smirked to himself before he heard the sounds of sirens and looked down from the building he was standing on and looked to see a familiar vehicle. Ack! Looks like I'll have to get my hands dirty after all. He snarled and teleported down to the street, raised his hands and fired off some fireballs from his hands towards the incoming rescue rover that swerved to the side to avoid the flaming projectiles. Let's go, guys! Connor shouted, jumping out of the rover, and charged towards Gulligan while the others went to help the civilians. Thomas ducked as one Batling swung its sword at him, then punched the monster in the chest, sending it tumbling down the stairs, then kicked another Batling over the side of the stairs, but was then hit by a punch to the back. Ducking down, he sweep-kicked a Batling off its feet, then leapt over the others and landed at the bottom of the stairs. Melissa grabbed one Batling that was about to bring its blade down on an injured Silver Guardian and kicked them away, allowing the injured soldier to flee, but took a kick to the chest that knocked her into a burning car. Raising her hands and blocking multiple attacks, she barely noticed another Batling throwing a grenade towards her but noticed it just at the last second and was able to roll out of the way before it exploded. "They're using grenades," she shouted, only to be thrown back by the other Batlings. Lena and Anthony stood back to back, ducking down when the Batlings swung their blades at them, then knocked them away with their hands, but another Batling fired its rocket launcher at the two of them, forcing the two to dive out of the way before the blast hit them. Lena then found herself surrounded by several Batlings that closed in on her. Oh great, ganging up on a girl. That's low. Anthony was also surrounded by Batlings, and blocked a punch thrown by one with both forearms but was kicked hard in the stomach by another that Batling which then threw him towards one of the pro-heroes who was injured from a grenade. "Come on, man. Get up," he said to the hero. Connor was having an equally difficult time, having grabbed a steel pipe, and swung it around like a sword at Gulligan who blocked each strike with his forearms, then grabbed it with his hands and bent it. Pathetic. Gulligan shouted and grabbed Connor by the jacket and threw him towards a lamppost. "You 5 are nothing." He snarled, then turned his attention back to the civilians who were too injured to move. "Now to roast some humans." Connor groaned on the ground and looked towards the civilians. The sight of them brought back a memory from long ago, during a terrible accident that would have cut his life short, had a certain hero not arrived to save him and countless others. "Not going to happen," he said as he stood up and looked at Gulligan. The others joined him and stood with renewed determination. Gulligan laughed as he prepared to burn the civilians alive, despite Elecplant standing in front of them defensively, but before he could launch his attack, he was interrupted. "Hey you, hot head!" Connor called out, forcing the flame monster to turn around and face the 5 teenagers. "You want to destroy Mariner Bay? You got to get through us first," he warned. "What are you gonna do about it, kids?" Gulligan scoffed. The 5 Rangers soon raised their morphers, crossed their fists over their hands and pulled them back, shouting a phrase that no one heard in years, except in documentaries. "Lightspeed rescue," they all shouted. All 5 Rangers flipped open their morphers and held out their hands as a red and white, blue, and white, green, and white, yellow, and white and pink and white radical vortex-shaped shields came out of their morphers and came towards them. Lowering their arms, the vortex covered them in their ranger suits with red, blue, green, yellow, or pink and white radical stripes, white gloves and boots with gold arm and leg bands, a gold belt with the Lightspeed emblem on it and holster for their blaster. A helmet of the same color as their suit appeared over their heads with the visor, the same emblem as the ones on their jackets appeared over their heads. All 5 somersaulted over the monsters and landed behind them, by the rescue rover. It can't be. The Power Rangers! Gulligan exclaimed. The civilians, pro-heroes and silver guardians stared at them in shock and amazement as a news helicopter hovered nearby and recorded what they were seeing. For the first time in 200 years, a full team of Power Rangers had appeared before their eyes, ready to fight for them. "Whoa, this is amazing," Lena said. "This feels incredible." Anthony agreed. "I feel my strength increasing." Thomas gasped. "Awesome," Melissa said. "This is just the advantage we need. Come on guys, let's do it." Connor exclaimed with a clench of his fist, then each of them struck a fighting pose. Connor held his fists near his helmet with his left fist near his helmet and his right fist further out. Thomas held his right arm sideways with his fist clenched, while his left fist was up at a diagonal position. Anthony held his hands out like claws, his left fist near his chest and his right fist held higher and above his left fist. Lena held her own fists out, her right fist close to her helmet and her left fist out in front, both sideways. And finally, Melissa clenched her fists and crossed her forearms over her chest, then pointed their hands at the monsters. "I better report back to the prince. Batlings! Destroy them!" Gulligan growled, then vanished in a form of flaming energy while the Batlings charged towards the Rangers. "Power Rangers, rescue ready!" The 5 Rangers shouted and then charged towards the Batlings and engaged them in battle, while the civilians watched in amazement, some of whom started recording the fight on their phones, as did the heroes and silver guardians. Lena kicked a Batling in the chest, sending it flying back into a few of its comrades, then pulled out her blaster and fired several shots at the Batlings, hitting them in the chest. Another Batling pulled the pin on a grenade and threw it towards Lena, but she spotted it just in time and fired her blaster, hitting the grenade which took out several Batlings in the explosion. Anthony backflipped multiple times as grenades exploded around him, landing on top of a wrecked car. Pulling out his blaster, he leapt from the car and fired his blaster at the Batlings holding the grenades, before they could pull the pins, except for one that landed near some of the Batlings carrying the rocket launchers. The grenade exploded and sent the Batlings flying, but one of them was able to pull the trigger of its launcher, but the rocket only slammed into a burning vehicle. This is why no one should play with guns, or rocket launchers. He deadpanned. Thomas punched and kicked his way through the Batlings, whacking away their swords, spun around and then kicked one of Creatures in the chest. Blocking a kick from another Batling, he brought his hands down onto its head, knocking it to the ground. Ducking down, he avoided the sword of another Batling, then disarmed the creature before delivering a might side kick to the chest of his foe. Their blasters in their baton mode, Connor and Melissa fought like they were using lightsabers. Connor held his blaster in a reverse grip style, parrying the swords of 3 Batlings, knocking them aside, then slashed them across the chest. Raising his baton, he blocked an attack from another Batling, knocking the sword away, then kicked his attacker away with a kick so strong, he might have been All Might. Melissa swung her own baton and knocked away a few Batlings, then swung it around to block an attack from behind. A quick backflip, she landed behind the Batling that attacked her, which was struck by the blade of its comrade, surprising the Batling before it was cut down by Melissa. "Melissa! Catch!" she heard Connor shout, and caught his own blaster, still in baton mode, raising her weapons and ducked down, catching the blades of their swords on her batons, pushed upward and then slashed them across the chest before tossing her brother his blaster. Connor punched a Batling in the face, then karate chopped another one at the neck before he saw the blaster flying through the air. Connor smirked under his helmet, then ran toward the wall of a nearby building and kicked off the wall, flying through the air before he grabbed his blaster and fired at the Batlings below him. "Time to finish this fight," Connor shouted as the other Rangers stood by him with their blasters in hand. Taking aim with their blasters, they fired at the remaining batlings which fell to their firepower. Turning around and twirling their blasters, they holstered their weapons as the batlings fell to the ground and exploded. Light speed. Power down, all 5 teens shouted, demorphing and panted slightly as the grateful civilians, heroes and silver guardians all surrounded them, praising them for saving their lives, with a few pro-heroes even asking them if they wanted to work for them. By the time the ambulances arrived at the scene, the Rangers had returned to David's lab, triumphant at their victory. Well done, all of you. You performed well out there, but this fight isn't over yet, this is only the beginning. David told them. Pretty sure I can guess what the next phase is. The Megazords? Lena guessed. Yes, but that honor belongs to Dr. Tatsumi. David answered. If my theory is correct, then I'm 100% certain that the demons will go to Japan, where some of the most powerful quirks are. All Might, Endeavor, Gang Orca, Edge Shot, and many other heroes will be targeted. Their quirks would give them the most trouble, or worse, they might have a way to take their quirks and use them for their own gain. But you can't leave Island, Papa. If you left the island, then villains would try to kidnap you and force you to make support items for them or steal your research for themselves. Melissa exclaimed. That's true. David agreed. Which is why all 5 of you are going to Japan instead of me. Wait, what? Thomas questioned. I can't leave Island, but the 5 of you can. You're not scientists and it's too risky to bring the island into Japanese waters. It would invite trouble. Fortunately, I have a solution to the problem. All of you will be transferring to schools in Japan, not schools like UA, but schools where you can still get an education and be in the country where we know the demons will attack. David explained. However, there is someone here who wants to meet you. The door to David's lab opened and walking through the door was a small stout man that appeared to be a hybrid of several animals, such as a mouse, bear, and a dog, with black eyes and white hair that matched his fur while a large scar ran over the right eye. The clothing of the man consisted of a white dress shirt, a dark red tie around his neck, double-breasted waistcoat and matching dress pants and orange laced-up sneakers with thick soles. I never thought this day would come, but now that it has, I am honored to meet the newest Power Rangers. The man said. Who are you? Connor asked. Why, my name is Nezu and I'm the principal of UA High School. The man named Nezu answered. Power Rangers. Lightspeed. Lightspeed Rescue. The camera flies over the water as the rescue bay rises from the ocean floor, with the 5 Rangers standing on top of it and looking at a high school in the distance. The signal is calling, our planet is falling, the danger will test you. Better make it Lightspeed Rescue. All 5 Rangers flip open their morphers and morph, ready for battle, then leap off the rescue bay and land on the top of the rail rescues. Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. Light. Speed. Go. The Rangers leap off the rail rescues and stand beside various pro-heroes, including Mirko, Lady Ryukyu, Best Jeanist, Endeavor, and All Might. Also beside them are the students of High School's hero course, including Izuku, Nijire, Ochako, Ida, Sui, Bakugou, Kendo, and the rest of their classmates. Power's on its way. Rangers save the day. In front of them, shrouded by shadows is All for One, with Olympus in front with an army of batlings and monsters, along with the League villains. Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. Light. Speed, go. The heroes and Rangers then charge forwards to battle. You're certain that the Lightspeed Rangers have returned, Gulligan? Olympus asked, standing in front of the kneeling fire monster. I could never forget those uniforms, my prince. They may not be the same Rangers I fought before, but they have returned. Gulligan answered. Having returned from his failed mission, he believed that he would face the fury of his prince. He awaited the inevitable attack, but it never came, only the laughter from his prince. This is perfect. These Rangers are but children and we can destroy them easily with very little effort. Olympus cackled, before recomposing himself. That's what the old me would say. Like I said, we underestimated the Rangers before and it cost us our victory, something I don't intend on repeating anytime soon. He then raised his hand and cast a spell that projected a sort of projection into the air, contacting Jinxer. Jinxer, how goes your search for new allies? I have already gathered the life force energy, some of the most dangerous enemies ever faced by the Power Rangers, even from before we were unsealed from our imprisonment. I have several allies in mind to act as your generals. Of course, we must be wary of those who plan to double-cross us. Jinxer reported. That's the last thing we need. I won't have a repeat of Triskull working for the likes of Trakenna instead of me. However, it appears the Power Rangers have returned, but they are only children. Even so, we must ensure that we are not betrayed. Olympus said with anger. Where are you now, Jinxer? I am now traveling the vast reaches of space to seek more allies. I believe a few of the warriors who serve Dark Spectre and Trakenna should do nicely. Jinxer replied. Gather the energy of these warriors, then return to the Skull Cavern immediately. It will take time to resurrect them, and I want them ready while I plan our next move. Olympus ordered. As you wish, my prince. It shall be done. Jinxer answered, vanishing from the projection. Without even an order, Gulligan left the throne room, leaving the demon prince alone. Perhaps, we should try a different tactic and look to other allies besides just monsters. He mused to himself, then cast the same spell as before, this time to the ground, and appearing through the projection were numerous pro-heroes in Japan. Perhaps, we should consider gathering strength from these so-called heroes. Back on Earth, the 5 Lightspeed Rangers looked to the small animal creature before them in disbelief. Your name's Nezu? Anthony asked. That's me. The one who could be a mouse, or a dog, or bear. But the important thing is. I'm the principal, the small creature said, tilting his head and raising one of his paws in the air. I originally came to Island looking for new security systems to install at UA High School, and you can imagine my surprise when I heard on the news that the Lightspeed Power Rangers had returned. I was excited to hear that the heroes who protected us for years before the emergence of Quirks have returned. It appears yours and Mondo's theory was correct, Doctor. Nezu spoke. Wait. You knew about the return of these monsters? Melissa asked in surprise. Nezu here was one of the people who believed me and Mondo about the demons' return. He felt that if the demons returned, they would target his students at UA and possibly take their quirks by force and use them to enhance the monsters. He's one of the few UA staff that took my warning seriously, along with All Might. David explained. I should also mention that I am a huge fan of the Power Rangers. More specifically, on how 5 teenagers with attitude were chosen to protect our planet from evils far more dangerous than anything in the history of Earth. It just proves my belief that, even those without quirks can become heroes, and after seeing your actions earlier today, how can I not be impressed? Nezu said with a smile. Which is why I have a proposal for all 5 of you. How would you all like to attend UA High School? The 5 Rangers stood in surprise with their jaws practically dropped. I'm sorry, but did I hear you right? You want us to attend UA High School? Lena asked. But I thought only those with quirks can attend schools that train heroes. Thomas added. That's just a myth started by some of the early heroes who didn't want those without quirks to interfere with their goal of becoming heroes, although it later became a mandate to prevent the children of those with checkered pasts from entering the schools and aiding any villains. Nezu clarified. Yeah, but hasn't exactly done anything to keep those with quirks putting down those without quirks and telling them that they're useless, unworthy of being a hero in any way or anything else like that. Connor scoffed, partially speaking about bakugou and from personal experience. You know, a lot of teachers have turned blind eyes to those with promising quirks and their attitudes towards those without quirks and those with weak quirks. That's why I'm the principal. Nezu said with his paw in the air. My school doesn't tolerate the bullying of anyone, quirkless or with weak quirks. I know from experience that many schools will do anything to allow a student with a promising quirk to enter schools like UA. Aside from bullying, many schools have used embezzlement and extortion to give these students a chance to enter my school, even threatening the families of students who have filed complaints against these bullies, which has resulted in many schools shutting down when such actions have been confirmed. So, we don't need to worry about being bullied? What if people find out that we're the Power Rangers? Connor asked. I'm pretty sure that everyone now knows who the Lightspeed Rangers are. Your fight has been shown on news networks across the world, but only the people who know you will know you are the Power Rangers. Nezu assured. That being said, does the leader of the Power Rangers wish to accept my offer? He asked, turning to Connor. Wait. Leader? I'm only 14, going to be 15 in September. I'm the youngest ranger here. Wouldn't Thomas, Anthony, Lena, or Melissa be a better choice for the leader? Connor protested. The Red Ranger is traditionally the leader of the Power Rangers, although there have been times when another ranger leads the team. Nezu pointed out. So, in a manner of speaking, the decision rests with you, young Grayson. The other rangers turned to Connor. Aside from Melissa, they had only known each other for only a few hours, and yet now, they were being offered a chance to attend one of the most famous school to turn out promising pro-heroes in the entire world, despite being among the 20% of the population that were quirkless. It was all too much for him, but at the same time he felt a deep sense of shame. Could I have some time to think about this, Nezu, sir? Connor asked. Of course, you can. I'm here for another few days and I didn't expect an answer right away. After all, it is a big decision to make, and I won't force you or your friends to go if you don't want to. Discuss it with the other rangers and I'll await your answer at the hotel. Nezu answered and turned towards the door. Oh, I should mention that Power Loader said that he would be honored to assist in repairing and restoring the megazords and helping in the construction of newer zords. After Nezu left, the other rangers turned to Connor and looked at their leader in confusion. Dude, why would you tell Nezu that you wanted to think about his offer? Do you know how many people dream of going to UA high school? Anthony asked. It's a great honor and great chance for us to become better rangers. Sure, there are other schools around the world, but UA high school. That's the school where Endeavor, Best Jeanist, Ed Shot and Present Mike went to, let alone Allmight himself. Thomas pointed out. I agree. We should take this opportunity. It will help us. Like the doctor said, Olympus might target those heroes in Japan and take their quirks for his monsters. If we're at UA, we have a better chance of helping them and fighting those monsters. Lena added. No. Connor said. I'm not going to accept his offer. This shocked the others, except for Melissa and David, who knew why he said no. But you haven't even had time to think about it. Why would you just say no? Lena asked. I don't want to talk about it. Connor shouted, storming out of the lab, leaving the other rangers back in the lab, save Melissa, who went after her brother. What was all that about? Thomas asked. Does he have a problem with heroes? It's more like he used to have a problem with them. David said, taking a seat at the table, and pulled out a photo that he showed the other rangers. 3 people were in the photograph. One was a younger Connor when he was 2 years old, while the other 2 were a man and woman in their early to late 20s to early 30s. The man had silver hair with blue eyes and pale skin, while the woman had blonde hair and blue eyes, like Connor. Both of them were wearing lab coats and Connor was being held in the hands of the woman. And because a hero was indirectly responsible for the death of his parents. Wait, you mean these 2 are Connor's parents? Anthony asked. Yes. Linda and Jack Grayson, they were scientists like me, but they most focused on using Ranger technology to build equipment to be used by both heroes and non-heroes, such as the suits used by the Rangers being able to protect them from harm, or how the rescue blasters are able to act as fire extinguishers. David said with a sigh. What happened? Lena asked. It's a long story. David said, taking a deep breath before he started to tell the other 3 rangers the story. The following day, after breakfast, Melissa had hoped to talk with her brother about what happened yesterday but found that he had already left the house on Island and went to Mariner Bay. She tried to call him, but her calls kept being ignored by her brother, causing her to become worried. Not even the other rangers, her father or Sam knew where he was, but Melissa had an idea of where he was, seeing as he had talked about a certain machine being in Mariner Bay that was going on a trip around the country, a machine that had interested her brother since he was a toddler. Clouds of steam billowed into the air as the nearly 300-year-old Union Pacific Big Boy 4014 steam locomotive, the largest and most powerful locomotive in history, thundered down the tracks towards Marina Bay's Union Station, passing by a passenger train and freight train that were passing by on the outer lines, with rail fans young and old lining the trackside with cameras and phones, taking photographs and videos of this massive machine while pro-heroes kept the people back away from the tracks. As the train passed through a short tunnel before the station, Connor watched the train pull into the station with tears coming down his eyes. Before his parents died, his father promised him that one day they would go and see his son's favorite locomotive, which he became fascinated with after a neighbor showed him the locomotive on his model railroad. "Well, Dad, I finally got to see my favorite locomotive in person. I just wish you and Mom could see it with me," he said to himself, taking a video of the engine pulling into the station with his phone, before he left the station and headed to another place, far from the station. After walking for 30 minutes, he came to his destination, a park in the middle of the city that was popular for dog owners. Finding a place in the park, he laid back on the grass and stared at the sky, thinking about Nezu's offer. What am I going to do? I really want to go to UA, but after everything I said all those years ago, I'm not sure I'm worthy of walking through the halls of UA High School. Mom, Dad, what would you do? He asked himself. Hey, hey. Aren't you the Red Ranger? A voice said from nearby. Startled, Connor looked to his right and saw the voice belonged to a fair-skinned 16-year-old Japanese girl of average height, with wide and curious eyes, long and thick upper eyelashes, royal blue eyes that complemented her periwinkle hair with side-swept bangs tucked behind her right ear while hanging over her left ear, and 2 short clumps of hair on both sides of her face. Their clothing consisted of a blue tank top, light black leggings, sneakers, and armbands on her wrists. With her was a woman of about 25 years old with chin-length blonde hair, thin yellow eyes, slit pupils, and most notably, extremely sharp teeth. Their clothing consisted of a gray shirt, black running shorts and sneakers. Talk about a crazy coincidence, running into the Red Ranger here of all places. Don't you have training to do, and shouldn't you be looking for those monsters? Oh, are you staking out the park in case they show up? The girl asked. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Back it up. Time out. Connor said, getting to his feet and crossing his hands like one question at a time, please. You're making my brain hurt. The older woman, whom Connor assumed to be from Okinawa, spoke up. Please forgive Hato, she's a very curious girl, especially for a young hero in training. The older woman apologized. Not the first time I've had someone like her ask me so many questions. Connor chuckled, thinking about the first time he met Izuku. But to answer your question, yes. I am the Red Ranger, but you both probably knew that already. I mean, you did see the broadcast of the fight yesterday, so keeping our identities a secret has pretty much gone out the window. There you are, Connor. Melissa shouted as she ran into the park. I knew you'd be here. You always come here to think when you have something on your mind. Your name's Connor? The older woman asked. Yes, ma'am. Connor Grayson. This is my older sister, Melissa Shields. Well, more like my older adoptive sister. Connor answered. Wait, when you say Shields, do you mean as in David Shields? The unofficial sidekick of All Might when he studied in America. That's so cool, the blue-haired girl said with excitement. Oh, right. My name is Nijire Hato. And I am Ryuko Tatsuma. The older woman introduced. Wait. You mean you're the dragoon hero Ryukyu? The number 9 hero in Japan? Melissa asked in surprise. What brings you all the way to America? Tracking down a dangerous villain. He fled Japan a few days ago and one of my old friends in America said they spotted him in California. Nijire is my work-studies student and a second year at UA High School and the two of us had a few run-ins with this villain before he fled. Ryuko answered. I thought foreign heroes couldn't operate anywhere outside of their home country. Connor asked. Normally, that's the case. But we were given special clearance by the Hero Safety Commission to travel overseas and apprehend this villain before he could disappear again. But we didn't expect to be fighting monsters. I don't think you can imagine our surprise that during our investigation, we see the Power Rangers return after nearly 2 centuries of being considered legends. Ryuko explained. Hey, speaking of Power Rangers, why are you here anyway? Nijire asked, looking at Connor. I needed someplace quiet to think. Connor answered. You're still thinking about Nezu's offer? Melissa asked. Wait, what kind of offer did Principal Nezu offer you? Nijire asked. He offered to allow all 5 of us to attend UA High School, despite the fact that our powers come from our morphers and we're quirkless. Melissa answered. Hey. That's cool. You should totally go to UA. I'll be a 3rd year next year and I can definitely help you guys out if you need any help. Nijire said excitedly. I have to agree with Nijire. It's a tremendous honor that you shouldn't pass up. Even if you are quirkless, the Power Rangers are still heroes and while they do have the authority to operate without being classified as vigilantes, UA can help you all be better trained to face villains. Ryuko added. I'm not going to accept the offer. Connor said bluntly. I'm not worthy to go to UA, not after what I've done. This is about what happened to your parents and how you acted afterward, isn't it? Melissa guessed. Yeah, it is. What happened? Ryuko asked. Connor took a deep breath, sighed, and turned towards the 2 Japanese heroes. My parents were scientists who had a strong fascination with Ranger technology. They believed that they could use Ranger technology to build support items to be used by future heroes. Imagine it, the mega battles used by the blue and green Lightspeed Rangers used by heroes who specialize in rescue work, a blaster in the hands of a hero with a quirk that gave them incredible accuracy, etc. The possibilities were endless. I've heard of those scientists. Jack and Linda Grayson. They attended Island Academy and presented a thesis about Ranger technology being used by heroes. You're their son? Ryuko asked. I am. One minute they were partners in the lab, the next minute they were husband and wife. I came along a year after they married and even though they were scientists, they always made time for me. I was their pride and joy, even after I was declared quirkless. Connor continued. I think deep down, they wanted a child with a quirk, one who they thought would be able to support, but they loved me just the same and didn't see me as a lab rat. They loved me and always supported my hobbies. You know the Up 4014 that's on a rail tour across the country? First time I saw that locomotive on TV, I told my dad that I want to see it in person one day, and my parents promised me that we would go and see it one day. I'm almost afraid to ask what happened to them. Nijire said with regret. Connor sighed again and told them what happened. I was 4 years old when my parents and I were at a local bank in a town outside Mariner Bay. My parents needed money to fund a research project they were working on. I think it had something to do with the carrier-based megazords or the zords used by the Overdrive Rangers, but I was too young to remember the details. But what I do remember is the events that transpired that day. He closed his eyes as tears started to form around his eyes. A small-time villain tried to rob the bank, but the police had already surrounded him and the bank, causing the villain to take everyone in the bank hostage. My parents kept me close to them, as a way to shield me from the villain, who shouted they wouldn't think twice about killing a kid. From what I remember, the police were trying to convince the villain to let the hostages go, trying to resolve the matter peacefully, but it didn't end the way they wanted. Melissa noticed the pain in her brother's voice as he continued to tell the story. A recently licensed hero was nearby and saw the incident, and rather than wait for the villain to surrender, he charged headfirst into the situation, crashed through the wall, and tackled the villain, inadvertently activating the villain's quirk, that turned their hair into quills similar to that of a porcupine. The quills went flying everywhere, but the only casualties were my parents, who shielded me from harm. Flashback. A 4-year-old Connor's eyes widened in fear as blood trickled down the sides of his parents and onto his face. Tears fell from his eyes before he screamed for his parents. End flashback. My parents died that day, protecting my life after a hero acted without a plan, and it was that day, my hatred for heroes and quirks emerged. Connor stated. You hated heroes and quirks? Nezu asked in shock. He did. Every time Uncle Mike came over for a visit, Connor glared at Uncle and didn't even interact with him, despite his best efforts to get along with him. Melissa answered. Every time the news showed a hero being heroic on the news, I silently said I hated them and wished they would get their asses handed to them. Even if they were saving people's lives, I still hated heroes with a fire that burned hotter than lava, and having All Might as an uncle didn't help much. Connor admitted, deeply ashamed of his past actions. To me, all heroes were the same as the one who got my parents killed. Later I heard that the hero involved with the robbery had his license revoked because he made a repeat of the same actions a few months later. And yet, you now support and respect heroes, despite what happened to your parents. Something must have changed in those 10 years. Ryuko noted. Actually, it was 4 years that I hated heroes. Connor clarified. For years after my parents were killed, a plot against the leader of this nation occurred. One of the candidates running for president, they had a plan to take the entire election and carry out their plan. This candidate believed in the whole Quirk singularity doomsday theory, that Quirks would become too powerful to control and eventually wipe out humanity. Even though the theory wasn't proven, the candidate was appealing to others who believed in the theory, promising that if he was elected as president, everyone with a quirk, be they man, woman, child, hero or not, would be exterminated, to protect the security of the country. Sounds like he didn't do well in the polls. Nezu guessed, already not liking this man. Heh. He wasn't. As the election went on, the polls were clearly shifting in the direction of the current president and the other candidate, who didn't believe in an unproven theory. That didn't sit well with the man, so he concocted a plan that would guarantee the election. People with the same beliefs as him managed to sabotage the engines of Air Force One, forcing it to land on an uncharted island close to Japan, taking the president and staff hostage, while another group assassinated his opponent in what was called a terrible accident. The plan was to execute the president and his staff, so that way with no opponents, the man would become president and be able to carry out his plan, all for the preservation of humanity as he called it. Connor continued. But he failed. I heard that the coup failed, thanks to All Might, who was nearby on another assignment and saved the president, his staff and family. Ryuko pointed out. He did, and the president was so grateful that he was saved by All Might, he invited him to Washington, D.C. so he could award All Might with a special Medal of Honor. All Might was honored and decided to invite my sister, her father, her mother, and myself to D.C. to attend the ceremony. Connor explained. The plan was to take a plane to D.C. and explore the city for a while. Dr. Shields got special permission to leave Island so he could attend the ceremony, but he and All Might were the ones who took the plane. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I caused a bit of a tantrum about going to attend some ceremony for a hero, so we missed the plane and ended up taking a train to Chicago, where we would meet the two of them and then fly the rest of the way. You had a sour throat because of your yelling. Melissa teased. What about your hatred of heroes? Nezu asked. I'm getting to that. Anyway, we took the Grand Continental, one of the newest trains to run the rails. 14 superliner cars, 2 baggage cars, dining cars, sleeper cars and powered by 4 of the newest Genesis locomotives, this train was to travel along the original overland route from the west coast to the east coast along the same route as the original Transcontinental Railroad, and it was its inaugural run. We were lucky to ride that train, but it would have been better if it was pulled by a steam engine. Connor continued. Wait, are you telling me that you were? Ryuko began with widened eyes. Yes. We were on that train when it happened. Melissa answered. When what happened? Nijire asked. The Grand Continental train wreck. Ryuko said. One of the worst disasters in American railroad history. It happened in the Moffat Tunnel in Colorado, a single-tracked tunnel with a length of about 6 miles. Opened in 1928, long before Quirks ever existed. Yeah, that's where it happened. It was on the second day of the journey. We had left Salt Lake City in the middle of the night, and when we awoke the next morning, we found out that somehow, the train had entered dark territory, a section of track 500 miles between Salt Lake City and Denver where no signals control the tracks and communications between railroad dispatchers and engineers are impossible. It caused many train wrecks in the past, and it's most reserved for freight trains, so you can imagine the surprise on the conductors' faces when they saw we were on the wrong track, but they couldn't do anything. Connor continued. None of us knew, but at the time, a freight train carrying military equipment and components requested by the scientists on Island for their research. Not even the crew of the freight train knew about what happened, but then again, they couldn't have known as the train was unmanned. If I remember correctly, the engineer of the freight train said he put the throttle in idle while he went to SWCH the points, but for some reason the throttle moved into full power on its own, which resulted in the engineer being hurt when he tried to climb back on board the train. Ryuko said. Yeah, and it got worse. Right after our train exited dark territory, that freight train had already made past Denver and heading right towards our train, which had somehow came to an unexpected stop in the middle of the tunnel, with no way of restarting the train. By the time the crew realized that the engines had failed, the freight train was already halfway into the tunnel. The crew of the train had only just started to evacuate everyone of the train when the freight train collided into our train. Melissa added. The cargo on the first half of the freight train went up like firecrackers, echoing through the tunnel and around the town of Fraser. Fires broke out, smoke billowed into the air, and the passenger cars at the front of the train were wrecked, trapping many passengers underneath the rubble. Among them were us. Connor continued, remembering that day. Flashback. 6 years ago. Smoke and fire raged through the wrecked superliner cars, as passengers screamed for help, hoping that someone would hear their cries. Among the twisted metal and seats, Connor was trapped underneath a mountain of debris while Melissa was helped to her feet by a conductor. Ahead of them, multiple explosions continued to go off as more cargo from the freight train detonated, weakening the structure of the tunnel. Connor tried to call for help, but his hoarse throat made it difficult for anyone to hear his calls. Passengers ran from the fire as emergency personnel and pro-heroes arrived to assist the injured, not even looking through the rubble for Connor, whose right arm was broken in the crash and starting to lose consciousness from the smoke and fire. More explosions continued to echo throughout the tunnel, causing the ceiling to start buckling from the weakened concrete, causing those in the tunnel to help the injured out of the tunnel before the inevitable, not even looking for Connor. Still pinned under the rubble, Connor felt his life slipping away before he heard the sound of metal being thrown off him. Struggling to keep his eyes open, he could only watch as more rubble was tossed away, and appearing before him was the number one hero himself, with a smile on his face. Fear not, young man. You are safe now. Because I am here. End flashback. Wait. You were saved by All Might. Nijire practically screamed. Yeah, and I still have a hard time believing it. Connor said with a chuckle. I mean, every time he came to visit Melissa and her father, I just stayed clear of him, thinking he was the same person as the hero who caused the death of my parents. But when the accident happened, he came to save me. Me. The boy who hated heroes like him and never even so much as talked to him when he visited the States. Did you thank All Might? Ryuko asked. That's the thing, a part of me is afraid to thank him. I spent 4 years of my childhood hating heroes, and then my faith in heroes was restored when the #1 hero saved my life, when everyone else had left me for dead. If I were to meet him now, he'd probably have forgotten all about it. Connor continued. Knowing All Might, he'd never would have forgotten about that rescue. He talked about it in an interview not long ago, saying that if he had gotten there sooner, he could have stopped the runaway. But his biggest accomplishment that day was saving all those lives. Ryuko smirked. So, what after All Might saved you? Anyway, that's the last thing I remember before I lost consciousness, and when I awoke, I found myself in the hospital in Denver. My arm had to be put in a cast, but thanks to the heroes and local authorities, there weren't any fatalities, and the line was soon cleared. The ceremony was put off for a few more days, at All Might's request, but while I never got to thank him for saving me, he inspired me to become a hero in my own way. Connor said. Sure, I don't have a quirk, but that didn't stop me from wanting to be just like All Might. So, I made it my goal, to become a hero in a way similar to All Might, despite being quirkless. People with quirks bullied me, saying that I could never become like All Might, but I continued to work to my goal, training to become someone people can look up to, who can be inspired by my actions. But going to UA, I'm not sure if it's the right action. Why should that matter? Nezu said. You've got a chance to go to UA, and that's not an opportunity you shouldn't pass up. Being the first Rangers to attend UA, that's going to be something to remember long into the future, plus you don't have to go to become a pro hero. You can be whatever kind of hero you want to be, and that's the kind of choice only you can make, and if you do end up going, then you can count on me and my friends to have your back. Connor smiled after Nezu finished speaking. At first, he thought she would put him down and say that he shouldn't go to UA, due to the fact that he and the other Rangers were born without superpowers, but here she was, actually saying that she and whoever their friends were would have their backs. Thanks, Hato. That means a lot to me. I guess what I really needed was a pep talk from someone like you. He chuckled, his face turning red. And maybe, when we go to UA, if you have tea time, we could, maybe, grab a bite to eat, he stuttered. Are you asking me out? We only just met and you're like totally younger than me. Nezu said, before she giggled. I'm just kidding, I've had a lot of people ask me out. But, she began only to be cut off when sirens filled the air as fire trucks raced past the park, heading towards the station. That doesn't look good. Neither is that. Melissa exclaimed, pointing to the smoke rising from the direction of the train station. Connor. Yeah, I know. He said and brought up his morpher. Doc, we've got a fire at Mariner Bay Station, send the other Rangers to the station. Melissa and I will be there shortly. Understood, Connor. David replied over the communicator. You two need a lift? Ryuko asked. We'll be fine. You two have your own mission to deal with. Connor replied and ran out of the park with Melissa behind him. The rescue rover was already parked by the station by the time the two of them arrived, while the station itself was completely engulfed in flames. How did this happen? Melissa asked Lena. I don't know, but it doesn't look like a small-scale fire. Lena answered, shortly before an explosion shattered one of the station's windows. Watch for glass. Firemen rushed past the Rangers, running into the burning building as fire engines continued to dose the building with water, trying to put out the fire. They're going to need help. Let's do it, guys. Connor said with determination, then held up his hand. The others followed suit, then all shouted at the same time. Light speed. Rescue. All 5 teens morphed into their ranger uniforms, much to the surprise of the bystanders standing behind the barriers placed by the firemen and police, then rushed into the burning building. Banners, benches, and plants were aflame as firemen rushed in behind the Rangers with firehouses, spraying water on the flames while other firemen broke down the doors to various sections of the station, guiding the bystanders still trapped in the building to safety, but the flames were already starting to grow out of control. Whoa! Thank God this isn't like that old pre-Quirk movie, Volcano, otherwise no one would be able to stop this. Anthony exclaimed. This is real life, not a movie. Thomas reminded the Green Ranger, scanning the station with the scanner in his helmet. The doors to the platform are blocked by flames and the fire on the platform is spreading rapidly. He reported. Thomas, Anthony, Lena. Help the firemen evacuate the people in the concourse, Melissa and I will handle the platform. Get these people out of here. Connor ordered, before running towards the platform with Melissa, while the other 3 rangers helped the others. Rescue blasters in hand, the blue, green, and yellow rangers sprayed the fires with their blasters extinguisher mode, putting the blaze out and allowing the firemen to carry several bystanders out of the station. One bystander sprained their ankle when the fire started and was hobbling towards the exit before Lena picked them up and carried them out to safety. This door is stuck. We can't break it down. A fireman shouted from one of the nearby restaurants where some bystanders had hoped to take shelter from the fire. We need some help over here. Stand back. Thomas shouted and kicked the door down hard, allowing the fireman and himself to carry the injured out the building before the fire began to spread rapidly. Stay low and follow the fireman, we'll get you out of here. He assured the bystanders. Anthony had picked up an elderly man who was stuck in his wheelchair. Handing him off to a fireman, Anthony raced back into the fire and looked for more bystanders, when he heard the sound of a dog barking loudly. Following the barking, Anthony found the dog hadn't left the side of its owner, who had fallen unconscious due to the smoke. Don't worry, boy. I'll get you 2 out. Anthony said, picking up the dog's owner and carried them out of the building with the dog following him. The situation in the concourse was under control, but the platform was a different story. The people stuck on the platforms were scrambling through the doors as fast as possible, knocking others down and almost trampled them, but were helped up by the rangers or the firemen that had followed the red and pink rangers to the platform. Is this everyone? Melissa shouted. The driver of that steam locomotive is still inside. He's got to get out of here, one of the firemen shouted back. I'll get him. Connor exclaimed and ran back onto the platform towards the parked big boy, connected to several tanker cars that were parked on the platform and climbed into the cab. We gotta go. This place is about to burn down, he shouted to the driver. I've got to get this locomotive and the cars out of here. Some idiot decided to park those fuel cars in the station because there wasn't enough room in the yard. There's 5,000 gallons of fuel in those cars and if they go up, then they'll take the whole station and 3 city blocks with them. I've got to get them out of here, the engineer countered, coughing from the smoke and flames. Connor could see the determined look in the engineer's eyes as they reached for the throttle, almost collapsing from the heat, but Connor caught him and placed his hand on the throttle. Then let's get this thing out of here quick, he said to the engineer who opened up the throttle. The engine's massive wheels spun on the rails, trying to get a grip, but at last the world's largest and strongest locomotive finally lurched forwards, pulling its unexpected cargo, blasting its whistle long and loud as it cleared the station. Flames leapt from the platform as the engine and cars slowly made its way out of the station and onto the open line. Yeah. That's it, old girl. Come on, give it everything you got. The engineer said to the engine. Connor chuckled as he jumped from the cab as it left the station yard, just as helicopters with water tankers arrived, dropping water onto the burning station, and finally putting the blaze out. As the fires died down, Connor could have sworn that he saw a creature with a 3-clawed hand and a rocky body glowing like lava. Power down. Connor shouted, demorphing as the last of the fire faded away. What was that thing? He thought to himself before the other rangers arrived in the rescue rover. Fire's under control, we'll let the firemen handle the rest. Everyone's alright, thanks to us and the heroes. Thomas told Connor, who climbed into the rover, then drove back to David's lab. Days after the fire, news reports about the fire, praising the actions of the heroes and Power Rangers for saving the lives of everyone trapped in the station and saving a piece of railroad history. The cause of the fire was still under investigation, but Connor was thinking about what Nijire and Ryuko said to him about the offer. My parents would want me to follow my heart. And I know where my heart is leading me. He said to himself, then picked up his cell phone and called the hotel where Nezu was staying. Principal Nezu, it's Connor Grayson. About that offer you made us. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 2. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author CT7567 rules on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.